The following is not an argument against Islam as a religion, but it is an argument against claims made by some Muslims that Islam is pro-science, or that it encourages scientific investigation, or even that Islam is scientific in itself. The idea that Islam encourages science is based on the fact that a lot of discoveries were made by Arabs several centuries ago and by subjects of the Ottoman Empire, which of course were Islamic regimes. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Islam encourages science. It is more a case of Islam tolerating science during those periods. Moreover, the rulers of the time didn't see science as an endeavor that would benefit all of humanity. They saw it as something that could be useful to them. And as a result, very often, discoveries that were made during those times were subsequently forgotten about. And they've only recently been rediscovered by historians. Which means that those discoveries were in fact of use to nobody. So much for encouraging science. Of course, the fact that these discoveries were made under Islamic rule means nothing really if you think about it. It would be akin to me saying that any invention made in America would be a Christian invention because George W. Bush happens to be a Christian. Another very often heard claim is that the Quran is apparently full of scientific facts. I'll state just two of these here. The first one is to do with mountains. Apparently the Quran states that the mountains are like pegs and that the earth is like a cloth held steady by the pegs. Now, this is in fact factually not just incorrect, but exactly the opposite of what mountains really are. Mountains are not things that hold the earth steady. Mountains are the direct result of a tumultuous earth that churns itself over during plate tectonics. A second example of a passage from the Quran that apparently states a scientific fact is one that speaks of heavens being torn asunder like a rosy red hide. The evidence for that, apparently, is an image made by NASA of a nebula. A red nebula, obviously. What the person who put this so-called evidence forward obviously didn't realize that the image was a false color. That means that the color is added afterwards in order to exaggerate the features that the person making the image or showing the image is interested in. That nebula isn't red at all. And in fact, if you think about it, a red image of a nebula is hardly sufficient to stand in for a passage like the heavens being torn asunder like a rosy red hide. That conjures up images of the heavens, the whole of the heavens being torn asunder. It would be a spectacle that would stop everybody in their tracks. Not a spectacle that is invisible to the naked eye and that can only be seen by telescope. Now, it is not clear to me why somebody would resort to lies, because that is effectively what these things are, in order to substantiate their claim that Islam is a true religion. It only takes away from something like Islam. It certainly cannot be any sort of justification for believing any of the claims. Of course, these are not the only two so-called scientific claims about statements in the Quran. But, to be perfectly honest with you, after having investigated two of them and finding them so obviously faulty, why should anybody bother checking out the other ones? It is clear that these are not scientific facts that are in the Quran, but instead that they have been construed by whatever people and for whatever reason to lure the gullible into believing that there is something to this. Like I said at the beginning of this video, this is not an argument against the religion of Islam. It is an argument against the sort of arguments that people put forward as supporting arguments for believing in such religions. The religion itself is as it may be. It could be good, bad, indifferent. But those arguments are clearly faulty, and those arguments must be dropped. And if those arguments are all that your belief in Islam are based on, I would suggest that you might think about why you are actually a Muslim. But if they're not, just drop these two arguments and leave whatever other arguments you have as a basis for your belief. There's no reason to drop your belief just because a couple of arguments that were meant to support it actually don't. So if your belief in Islam is based on other reasons other than the two that I've just illustrated here, then by all means, peace be with you. Assalamu alaikum.